your career. If you are looking to level up in your career, you are in the right place. Today, we are joined by Susan Brennan, COO at Bloom Energy. She is a champion for women and girls in STEM, and she actually started her passion for sustainability back in the 4th grade, which now she is a major player in that space. So thank you so much for joining us, Susan.
Lauren, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Wonderful. Well, let's go ahead and just learn a little bit more about you, because where you are today is not where you thought you would end up. So tell us about yourself and your career progression.
Yeah. So my story is that I wanted to be a genetic engineer, and my goal was to get a PhD in that. And today it would be called biotech something, but back in the 80s. So my dad died when I was 5 and he was 29. And it understandably rocked my family pretty deeply. And I've always had a scientific problem solving brain. So I wanted to use the gifts that I've been given and the talents I have to change the world and to make the world a better place for others, so that other children didn't have to go through what I went through. And along the way, it has been quite a journey. So I started in research. After college, I went to University of Illinois, from Illinois originally. And Lauren, you and I grew up across the river from each other. And went on into doing, I did breast cancer research. I did chemical research, and through a series of moves and opportunities. And my philosophy has always been, well, if I take this opportunity, what's the worst that can happen? So, you take something for a year, and if you fail, you go back to what you did. So when I was married at the time and moved to a little town in Iowa, and there were automotive factories there, automotive supplier factories. And so I had many opportunities to do research. It was right next to on the Nebraska border with Omaha. And I ended up at an opportunity to go into an automotive components manufacturer, and with the same philosophy. Well, the worst that can happen is I'm going to fail. And then if that fails, then I'll go do research at, University of Nebraska Medical Center, which is, that would have been a great opportunity for me. And not only did I not fail, but I ended up finding my I'll call my passion, my energy. I grew up in a steel town and in a factory town, and never, ever expected to ever work in a manufacturing world. And that's where I ended up. As soon as I walked into the factory, I just felt something. I felt an energy. I felt a connection. So from there, built a brand new factory in Kansas City from the ground up for a major automotive supplier. Did well there. Went to that major automotive supplier. Spent 14 years at Ford, running their manufacturing factories, and in the end, running the global business office for their, at the time, 100 manufacturing facilities around the world. Had always wanted to, sustainability has been a theme through my career. Always wanted to do something with a new technology, and had the opportunity to go to Nissan. And one of the reasons I went to Nissan is in the jobs that I was doing. Automotive is ruthless in benchmarking. So from those benchmarks, I was pretty confident that Nissan was going to build a mass production electric car, not just kind of a battery put into an existing car, but a real platform. So I thought, well, I'll go to Nissan and hopefully I will be around that vehicle. And I liked the fact that they were very technology driven. And again, if that doesn't work, I'll go do something else. And ended up coming to Nissan, and then I got to drive the first Leaf off the production line. So, when you put yourself, I think my, lesson is put yourself where you think you should fit, and the fit may come to you. And I was fortunate to do that after launching several vehicles at Nissan, including the Leaf. Got the opportunity to come to Silicon Valley and come to Bloom. Again, a major disruptive technology at Bloom, and really coming to be part of the team that's bringing this product to scale.
And tell us a little bit about what Bloom does.
Yeah. So Bloom is is an energy company, but we're a very sustainable and very reliable technology. So we produce electricity in a different way. So it's a fuel cell based technology, but the difference is, as opposed to poles and wires, we're distributed. So if I'll just use one of our customers that probably everybody's familiar with, Home Depot. So if you go to a Home Depot in parts of California and parts of the East Coast, and you go around the back, you'll see these boxes, and it's a very beautiful solution. It's not just amazing from its resilience and what it does, but also how it fits into an ecosystem. And so the facility will be powered from our boxes. So then, say, growing up in the Midwest, we were without power twice a year. You were without power in August when there was a tornado, almost always on my birthday, or you were without power in, January when the big ice storms came through, right? The poles and wires get knocked over. They come from these big centralized facilities. So it's distributed generation. So it's a really exciting disruptive technology where there are multiple different applications, but you can keep running when everyone else is out of power. Our tagline is always on, because we're always on and we keep our customers always on. So it's really exciting and fascinating. And it came from, NASA, right? So our CEO and founder originally was with NASA. So it's just amazing technology. And to get an opportunity like that after being in the automotive industry for 25 years, much bigger risk at this point. I'm leaving a really good job living in Nashville, living in a place that kind of everybody's moving to. And at this point in my career, and I tell people my age, generally when you're in automotive, you retire about 55. So I was about 4 years from an automotive retirement. And I started my life over. And I also had a 7th grader and a sophomore in high school. That I don't recommend doing. Maybe 6th grade, 9th grade, you move your kids, but 7th and 11th, or 7th, 11th, that was, or 7th and 10th, excuse me. That was pretty tough, but just to get an opportunity like this was just exciting. The time, rather than looking at kind of like the time of my life and the things that we would be giving up, low cost of living to high cost of living. We and big house to little house. I looked at all the opportunities, and in the end, even my kids now today are really grateful that I took the opportunity, and it's changed all of our lives, and it's really exciting to be part of not just an industry or a company that's really out there pushing the envelope. I mean, when I started this journey, I wanted to do something that would make people's lives better, and I feel very fortunate that each step of my career, I've been in both an industry that does that, as well as with a group of people that had the same passion.
Wonderful. Well, and I love how you highlighted how important that transition to the new community and this new opportunity was, not only for you, but also for your kids, in terms of learning a new perspective, as well as just taking advantage of new adventures.
Right. Yeah, no, my kids are pretty resilient. My oldest went to 6 schools and my youngest went to 7. So they don't always thank me for that. Hopefully someday they will.
Yeah, well, there's lots of challenges along with that, but also lots of skills that they learn because of it as well. So, you mentioned that you grew up in a steel town, kind of factory town. You have very humble beginnings, and so you have a special place in your heart for the underdog, you've told me before. So what advice do you have for people like you who didn't have the benefit of family connections, private colleges, or even anyone showing them the way early on in your career? So tell us what advice you have for folks like that and like yourself.
And you're exactly right, Lauren. What I get personal satisfaction from is if someone who is on the production line becomes a production supervisor, helping people early in their career, and maybe not early in age, but making some of those lower, I don't want to say lower level, that doesn't sound right, but different entry levels into leadership. It's exciting when somebody goes from a director to a vice president, or and you had a part of that, but it really, what I really am energized by is bringing people up through the system. So my advice to the underdog, I would say, is 90% of the time when I've gone to talk to someone or something has come up and somebody said, I really want to do that job. And then I ask them, well, have you applied for the job? And 90% of the time they'll say no. And I think when you come from humble beginnings, when you are an underdog, you often, it isn't that you discount your abilities, but you discount your ability to get through the system and, whatever that system happens to be, but your ability to move through an organization. And the worst that can happen is you fail. And so you go back to what you were doing. And so often I find, and I'll use a couple of examples, but there was a woman who worked for me in one of the auto companies, and she was very, very skilled at operations. And, there's picnic tables in factories, you have lunch with your team. And so I'd often go just sit at picnic tables and just ask people how they're doing, what's going on. And sometimes they'll talk to me, sometimes they won't. But in this case, they say, you're really good at what you do. And it was just an honest kind of question. I said, did you ever apply for the production supervisor role? And she said, no, and she was very humble. And I said, well, this, you can do whatever you want, but my opinion, you need to apply for the job because I think you would be amazing. And not only did she do it, she got the highest score ever on the test that, to being a production supervisor. So it's kind of a double, I was excited and she became a supervisor and she was really good. But I am also sad that for 29 years, that kind of talent didn't get moved to where it should be in the organization. So when I look at the underdog, when you're saying, when you're an underdog and you say, no, I'm not going to try that because I don't think I can, or people that don't look like me, and it's more, socioeconomic or educationally don't do that. You're leaving so much talent on the table and so much opportunity for the planet. So I'm always encouraging people not just to look at kind of their circumstances, but what could you do? What can you do to better the world? You're not just bettering yourself. And most humble people are motivated by wanting to better the world. So, but it's not scalable for a person like me to go sit at a picnic table. So somehow, and thank you for this opportunity, Lauren, maybe a few underdogs will go out and take that chance now after having this conversation. Social media may be able to send the message farther.
It's so true. There's so many women that I've spoken to that have desires to take their career to the next level, but when it comes to it, they think, I'm just not ready for that step yet. And so whether it's the fact that nobody's ever told them, like you did in that one case of I see potential in you, or maybe they've got the little bird on their shoulder telling them, what they're not good at or something like that. But to your point, just taking that step of trying and moving yourself into the opportunity zone is a huge step, because then all of a sudden now you're on the radar screen for some of the people who make the decisions, and you start that process.
Yeah, no, that's excellent analysis in that. So yeah, there's so much opportunity out there, and people just, without being tried, just go for it. One of the advantages of growing up humble is what's the worst that can ever happen to you, right? You're going to go back to where you started. Well, that was okay too, right? So, as long as, I think as long as people I've moved a lot of times without a safety net. And so I have a high tolerance for that, and not everyone does. So you have to kind of frame it in that, what's that safety net for you? And as long as you can always go back to where you started, you should have that safety net.
Absolutely. And the goals that you've set for yourself along the way have changed, because initially you just wanted to get to that next level or have a little bit of extra money at the end of the month. But obviously you've had to adjust those along the way too.
Yeah, my goal started out very humble. And maybe some people on this can understand it, and maybe they can't, but my first jobs coming out of college, I wanted to have more than $3 in my bank account at the end of the paycheck after I paid my bills. So, my big goal was not to have to worry about money. My short-term goal was to have like, $100 in my bank account instead of three. And then growing up, I was fortunate to have grown up in a community like St. Louis, where a lot of things are free. The Science Center was free. The zoo was free. That's all great. And I had, I still have, just great feelings about going to those places, but those were my vacations. So going across the river was my vacation. So I wanted to go somewhere other than St. Louis for vacation. So yeah, so I've definitely moved the goalpost, and they're much more precise now and much more targeted. And each time I get to the next level, I'm like, well, I can do that level above me, or I can do that level over here. I'm sure I can do that. And
do you have a specific process that you go through for that?
No, I have a pattern recognition brain. So the way my brain processes information, I see patterns, and I try to fit myself into those patterns. So coming into manufacturing, what were the skills that I brought? Because the first plant manager that hired me, he looked at me and he's just like, you have no manufacturing experience, but I'm going to hire you, and I don't know why. And so, so turned out to be good for both of us. So it's an ability to see, I'll use a hockey analogy. In my brain, I can see where the puck is going. And as long as I'm following where that puck is going, that's why, building cars was a phenomenal career. But I really wanted to be back in 2002 when I, early in my time in the building cars, I could see that's where the puck was going. So things that are today commonplace conversation, acceptable, back in 2002, when you said, hey, I want to build an electric car, people thought there was something wrong with you, so they were like, nobody's there. I mean, I can't tell you how many group meetings I was in. Nobody's ever going to buy those. Those aren't practical. They're too expensive. But, I could just see, and part of it is, sometimes humble beginnings pay off. I mean, the air quality in the town I grew up in, I love my hometown. I think it's an amazing place. But I've seen what's happened to it as industry leaves. And so the downside of growing up there was the air quality. The upside of growing up there was, good education, good parks, good people, from a solid tax base. And so when things change, you want them to be on a continuum. So what I saw with the electric vehicles, 20 years ago now, is that you can do all kinds of things to try to make a car have less particulates or less, less combustion. But an electric vehicle, you have none of that combustion. So, it was just, really understanding that someday air quality is going to be really important. Well, pandemic today, air quality is really important. And that's one of the reasons I'm proud to be at Bloom. Our boxes, we produce electricity without particulates. So, it's really around me constantly scanning the environment for new information. I read a lot. I do travel a lot. I pay attention, and I want to be in the middle of the tough, the tough problems. I want to be in the middle of the new technology, and being part of the team that brings these new innovative, whatever ideas they are, to the marketplace.
Yeah, thank you for putting that context around the career planning in terms of just really paying close attention to the marketplace and where things are going. That's so smart. Let's go back in your earlier in your career when you got into manufacturing. Describe the inflection point in your career when you realized that you had what it took to get to a senior level.
Yeah, so coming in, I think the way it worked also helped me get that vision. Coming into a small supplier in a smaller state, so I was able to have a lot of impact. And I saw quickly how fast bringing my scientific brain to this facility. And the first plant manager who hired me after I'd been there a while, he came to me and he said to me, and this has impacted me ever since. He goes, you have an ability to get people to do things that they don't want to do, and they're energized by it. And no one had ever, said that to me, that I was able to get people to follow me, but in a positive way, and I was able to push people out of their comfort zones, without them without them feeling uncomfortable. I mean, they were comfortably uncomfortable. And I had kind of thought about that. I thought, well, okay, if I'm good at that, then that's a skill that can serve me well, and I believe serve organizations well that I'm a part of. So it kind of started there. So that was maybe the first, kind of first going into the factory and feeling like I belonged. And then, the feedback from the first plant manager that hired me, who hired me again with like, why am I doing this? And then from there, his boss, building the new facility in Kansas City, everything that could go wrong did go wrong building that facility. So we're small company building a facility for a company, like Ford, just a huge company. And tornado hit when the facility was in Red Iron, which is the structure. A tornado hit it, and I was in Detroit over Memorial Day and came back. And what was once this beautiful building getting ready to skin was a bunch of, this tornado was, it just like mangled the sheet metal. It was just laying on the ground. So, put that back together while we were building the prototype seats made out of parts from Europe that, were very expensive and almost impossible to come by. There was a 500-year flood on the Missouri River, and it flooded the facility that we were temporarily working in. So after all of that, we still were able to get the product to the customer on time. And then we were the first facility, some people who are familiar with automotive at the time, Ford had what was called a Q1 flag. It was, and it was really, really, really hard to earn. And if they still have it, it still is hard to earn. And we were the first new facility that was ever able to get that quality certification in 6 months ever. And I thought, well, after everything I've been through, and I was able to keep, build a great team, keep the team together, the team delivered. Maybe there is something to this. Maybe I should go to the next level. So it was really that probably the inflection point of being at that supplier with those different challenges happening. And then I was always able to have the right team and my own personal conviction to get through. And that's when I decided, well, go for the brass ring. So then I went into the big car companies.
Awesome. Yeah. So you have a passion for sustainability, and you were able to make that very intentional career move to get there. Like you said, follow where the puck is going. So many people out there, especially in younger generations, are really passionate about sustainability. So what advice do you have for people who want to focus their careers in that direction?
Yeah, that's a great question, because today it is a career. When I was starting, it was only a career for people who were kind of on the fringe. But I still think the same, I'll call it a strategy that makes it think like it was well thought out, but the same principles apply, is I put myself in a place. One, you have to put yourself in a company that really truly walks the talk. And then when you put yourself in that company, then find the roles. And again, go find the hard problems. It was easy for me early on, because anytime there was kind of a sustainability project or policies, or the company thinking about it, it'd be like, well, put Susan on that team. She loves that stuff, So because I was very vocal and at that time very visible, because I did make say things like, I really want to work on an electric vehicle, back when that was not cool.
I love that. That's important though, because you put it out there that you wanted these kinds of opportunities.
Yeah, no, I did. I put it out there. And that's what I'm saying. I think the same principle applies today. Put it out there. It's much easier to go to a company that truly cares about sustainability today than it was when I started my career. I hate to say this, but 36 years ago. And as I said, I took ecology in 4th grade. So how you get rewarded in a steel town when you show promise and you show initiative is you get to go to summer school in a non-air conditioned building in the summer in the Midwest when it's 100 degrees and 100% humidity. But I was so excited. I wanted to go to that summer school. I wanted to go to that class. I would read, back then there were two papers in St. Louis. I read both the papers. I read Time and Newsweek. So, I'm a nerd from way back. I felt, and I was also kind of similar to the movements that are happening today. Back then, 72, 73, 74, the EPA was being formed. Air quality was horrendous. Rivers were catching on fire. And that was my, I was a young activist. So, but those things were there wasn't social media, there wasn't Google, there wasn't the internet. But at the on the 5 o'clock news and the 6 o'clock news and in the newspapers and in the the magazines of importance, the country was really awakening to the environment as an important part of our democracy. That there were things happening back then that were creating our quality of, that were significantly impacting our quality of life and the quality of our cities and and so like if you just change the date, right, you almost have the same story today. Yeah. So to your point, go where that's important and put it out there.
Great. Thank you. Now, you also have worked in male-dominated industries your whole career, essentially. So there's still a long way to go in terms of the opportunity, not the opportunities for women, but just the women in leadership gap. So what is your perspective of what needs to change, or what can women do to, again, put themselves out there, and and other thoughts on that?
Yeah, so this is a really, really hard one, and it's really personal for me, which is why I spend so much time, my personal time on girls in STEM, particularly in middle school, and then women who are in STEM, keeping them in the field. I started a nonprofit. I'll just put a plug in here for Southern Automotive Women's Forum if anyone's interested in that. But in those topics, when you are in manufacturing, it's a snake, right? And so if I'll just use a car analogy, right? If the person who's putting the windshield in isn't there, the car doesn't get built. So the challenge that I see from a manufacturing operations, growth of women in these areas isn't that women aren't talented. They are. I work with some of the most talented women in my career in manufacturing. It's the ability for companies to offer flexible opportunities while still staying in business. And it's probably of all the challenges out there that need to be solved, I see it as probably, there's so many hard problems, but how do you offer flexibility in an environment that is inherently not flexible? So when I started this, there was no flexibility. You used to have FaceTime, and you didn't leave until the plant manager left, and there was very little ability to have any flexibility, and the amount of time you spent in the factory was determined how dedicated you were to your career and likely your career progression. These were very 20th century post World War II principles that were ingrained. Factories also were not the nicest places to be, and so that has changed dramatically too. Most, not all, but many factories today are cleaner. They're much safer. You can look at the safety statistics over time. They're well lit. It's a different kind of environment. So I think, there was kind of a bias that it wasn't a good environment to work in. It is a tough environment, no matter whether there's good lighting or not. It's being in manufacturing operations is a tough environment. But one of the challenges that I personally have wrestled through and try to wrestle through is how do you make an environment that does take into account the different stages of a woman's life. And just because it impacts women personally doesn't mean it doesn't impact men, because men are also in these family units. So the flexibility is much better today than it was. Inclusion is substantially better. When it's interesting because when I speak sometimes to young girls and I tell them, when I first went into manufacturing, many of the men said, well, I'm not going to work for you because you're a woman. And then they would say that to my face. And it never really bothered me. And so first of all, the women are like, I can't believe they said that to you. And I'm like, believe me, every person in my family felt the same way. Like, what is she doing in there? What, it just maybe because of the culture I grew up, I knew there was a lack of comfort with women as leaders in operations. So it never really fazed me. And it gave us a dialogue to start the conversation with, well, let's try to work through this and see if we can get through this. So it's a tough answer. What I want to leave from a positive note, and my career, I believe, is an example. It is a great place to have a career if you're a woman. The opportunities are endless. People aren't going to stop making things, and how things get made is so much more technical today, with automation, artificial intelligence. I try to study artificial intelligence as much as I can. Those kind of things are coming along. Material science, Bloom's an example of that. There's just the cerebral, the science, the physics is just so incredible. And I know there's so many women out there that are very energized by those kind of topics. Get your degree in material science, get your degree in chemical engineering, get it in electrical engineering, and come into manufacturing. And I think you have to come in and be a part of it. One, to see just how amazing the career opportunities are and how rewarding they are. But then also to be part of the change. The Margaret Mead quote, never underestimate what a small group of people can do to change the world. In fact, it's the only thing it ever has. So I just continue to encourage the women, come into operations, come into manufacturing. Let's keep moving the ball down the field.
Wonderful. Well, I love how you just highlighted how the opportunities are endless. And when you put your goals out there and then you continue to demonstrate your ability to achieve from a personal effectiveness standpoint, as well as identifying what you are looking for in the next level, that the opportunities are there. So thank you for sharing your experience, Susan. It's been a fantastic conversation.
All right. And thank you. I appreciate you offering this